I did finally manage to finish Kills Well with Others, and this one was pretty fun. I did enjoy following the four women in this again and seeing their kind of relationship to each other and seeing the relationship to other people because we did get some more characters introduced in this one. The only thing that I didn't particularly like is I feel like there wasn't as much humor in this as there was in Killers of a Certain Age. It was definitely a very fast read, though, when I was able to actually sit down and read it. Because if you watched the reading vlog that this was part of at the end of April, I kind of got distracted by those two books, as well as Dungeon Crawler Carl book 6, or no, I'm sorry, book 5, which I did not finish before this, but I do believe as of the day I'm recording about this, I will have finished that one by the end of today, maybe tomorrow. But yeah, I will let you know when I record about that. But overall, I did enjoy this. Like I said, it was definitely very fast paced. It was very thrillery, which I did enjoy. And it did have some bits of humor, just not as much. I did like the fact of like when they were talking about making yourself look a different age and specifically look older, you got to make sure to buy the good makeup because if your wrinkles run, you'll be busted. And that was just pretty funny. And I feel like that kind of tells you what the humor in this is like. But yeah, definitely pick this one up if you liked the first one. Definitely pick the first one up if you like things like, um, the 007 movie, James Bond movies. If you liked, I cannot remember exactly what it's called. I believe it's called An Old Lady Should Not Be Disturbed or something like that. If you liked that, then you would also like this. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Book Cave with me, Jenny. So it is time for May's wrap up, and I had quite a few books this month, and this was actually a pretty good reading month as well. I enjoyed most of them, and yeah, I'm going to send you back over to Past Me to let you know what I read. I made it to book 5 of Dungeon Crawler Carl this month, The Butcher's Masquerade, and yeah, there's not really a whole lot I can say about this without spoiling the rest of them, but this is just as insane as the first 4. And like, if you've read book 1 and liked it, I feel like you just have to continue because each book really does add more and more to like the world and the characters. And this has a surprising amount of heart. Like, it's kind of buried under there, but yeah. We have a scene where Donut asks Carl, she's like, why doesn't it hurt like it should? And yeah, if you read it and you get that, like, that just was a gut punch. Like, holy cow. And obviously, they keep getting bigger and bigger, obviously, each book, because each floor of the dungeon takes a little bit longer to get through, so it kind of makes sense. And this one is floor number 6. So that was also interesting because, again, if you've read multiple books, actually, I think even the first one says it, that certain floors are connected story-wise. So this one kind of continues some things that were in there. And I do recommend getting the physical books because these have a part at the end that's an extra little bonus chapter that is not part of the either audio or digital books, and that is called Backstage at the Pineapple Cabaret. And This is the first physical one I've read. I read the other 4 in digital. So I did also wind up getting book 4, The Gate of the Feral Gods, physically from the library just so I could read that extra chapter. And I can say after reading them out of order, because I did read this one's first, you don't necessarily have to read them in order. It is better because they are at least somewhat interconnected, but they add a lot to the story going on kind of outside of the dungeon. And that's all I'm going to say, other than I do have books 1 through 3 as well on hold, just because, especially after reading the bonus in this, I want to read the rest of them. So those 3 are on hold, and I will let you all know when I get to them. And yeah, I'm super excited to get on to book 6 and 7. I'm still waiting on 7 to come in from the library. And then book 8, of course, is not yet published as I'm recording this, but I was able to put it on hold at the library, so I am on the list for that as well as soon as I get it, as soon as they get it. And that actually works out perfectly because I feel like by the time I finish the next 2 books, I'm going to be at that point. And yeah, as I've said before, these are very bingeable and just, yeah, highly recommend it. I made it to book 5. I'm now on book 6 of Dungeon Crawler Carl, The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. And yeah, this was a really chunky one too. This was over 800 pages. I do read these relatively quick because the way they're written, there's a lot of action and it just kind of draws you in and you want to keep reading and keep reading and keep reading. So this one is about the 8th floor of the dungeon. And so obviously I can't say a whole lot about this, but we continue to get a lot of character development of the side characters in this one. And I really enjoy that because I do feel like the way Carl is developing, he is developing, but it has kind of slowed just because the further they go down in the floors, the more they have to actually like do stuff. That was the thing with this, is that there really wasn't any downtime like there were in other books where they could like sit and have a conversation and kind of mull over what was going on. And at least Carl couldn't. So we do have the secondary characters who are maybe kind of able to, and so they get some growth. And I wasn't as big a fan of this one as I was of the previous ones, mostly because this is a card-based battle system on this level. And honestly, I'm not that big into games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and Pokemon. Like, I do enjoy them, but I'm not a huge player of them. And so I wasn't a big fan of like that. Obviously, this had a lot to do with like the card mechanics and stuff. And so that part I just found not to my taste. However, like the overarching plot and everything that's going on outside the dungeon, that was really fun. I feel like that has become much, much more of a plot point now. And the final chapter, the at the Pineapple Cabaret, I feel like even if you listen to these or read them digitally, I really feel like you should try to find physical copies of them, like from your library or something. Or I'm not sure, maybe Matt Dinniman will eventually release like a collection of that when this is done. But I highly recommend that part as well, like the very end chapter, the Pineapple Cabaret part adds very, very needed backstory as to what's like going on with within the dungeon. I will put it that way. And yeah, I really do continue to like this series, and I'm very upset that I only have 2 more books now, and then I'm going to have to wait. Because I know that the next book, I have a feeling I will probably finish that this month as well, just because of how fast I've been reading these. On Our Best Behavior is a journey through the 7 deadly sins and how they have affected life, and more particularly, how they have affected the author's life. This honestly felt a lot more like a memoir than anything else. I did feel like it was still written very well and was definitely had some thought put behind it. However, I would recommend it more as, like I said, a memoir rather than anything as like a study or anything like that. It's kind of in a weird little zone, but it was written well, like I said, like 3 times now, and is definitely worth a read if you're kind of interested in, how religious rules have affected life, more specifically this one woman's life, and how she has like come to look at the 7 deadly sins as not so much that they are a sin or anything, but that they are something that is kind of pointing to, hey, something is wrong. you know, like saying, if you're angry, you kind of look under that. Why are you angry? Oh, you're worried that if this person has this, I'm not going to. That's not true. And to kind of like, realize that sort of thinking is where these come from. It was definitely very much about emotions, I would say, as well, which, yeah, um, it's also relatively short and something that, like I said, I do feel like some people would be interested in. I do feel like it could have been gone more into depth into if it was just a different sort of book. Listened to The Swans of Harlem, and this actually has 2 different versions. This gold cover version is I guess you consider it the adult version, although, like, quite honestly, there's not anything in there that would necessarily be inappropriate for a younger audience. But then there's also a pink cover, and that is more edited for young adults. And this follows the Dance Theater of Harlem and 5 of the ballerinas who performed there. And it follows their lives throughout being performers, their lives throughout dealing with the civil rights movements, and also the AIDS epidemics through their male partners that were in the dance studio as well. And I just feel like this is a really eye-opening book to like show this history and to also show how much these women cared for Arthur Mitchell, who founded it, but then also just how cruel he could be to them as well, and just kind of that juxtaposition. And we do get to touch on a lot of different things in there and throughout this. And yeah, it was definitely a very interesting piece of history. and something that if you are at all into ballet, that I feel like you would really enjoy. I finished my first Riley Sager book, and that was The Last Time I Lied. This was definitely an interesting one. It had a lot of twists and turns. I didn't know who to trust, and honestly, I didn't have much of a clue where this was going. I'd say this is more of a mystery thriller than just a thriller, but it was definitely written very well. And yeah, I I don't have a whole lot to say about it because, I can't help but spoil things if I do. But yeah, if you like thrillers, if you like Riley Sager, and you haven't read this one, this is definitely a good one to either read or listen to. And yeah, that's, I said, about all I can say about this one. So I started reading the Power Girl comics. I'm not sure if this one is like New 52 or if it's before that. This is one that was written by Amanda Connor, and she did the New 52, Starfire, and Harley Quinn. And so, of course, this one has Tara in it as well, Tara slash Atlee. And I do find that interesting that the more I read comics, it seems like each author tends to have more continuity than kind of like overall. I did feel like this was a little disjointed because we have the first half that is Power Girl trying to figure out her past, which, of course, I already knew this from some other ones that I had read, but, they obviously have to try to rehash it. However, the first half was that, and then all of a sudden, after that first half, the next one goes in, and she's just like, oh yeah, this was my past, and we don't get anything about her discovering it. And yeah, that annoyed me a little bit because I really wanted to see her discover it and kind of learn how she found out her past. The battles were relatively fun. They were kind of, your normal superhero things. And I do like that we get the backstory as well as to why she has the window, in the top of her outfit. I thought that was a good choice for, to give like a reason for that. And yeah, I'm kind of up in the air about this. I did check out several more Power Girls that the library had, so I am going to try those and see if I like that more or if I want to try to find maybe something like Justice Society of America, where Power Girl is more part of a group, because there was a few episodes of that mixed in here, and I did kind of like those. I felt like she worked well with the group, and that it kind of brought everything together a little more. But yeah, I will read more and let you all know what I think about the other parts of this. So I read Power Girl Returns, which I believe is either like pre-new 52, no, pre-rebirth in the DC universe, possibly a little further into it. While I did enjoy this, like the previous one I read, it felt kind of disjointed because there was a lot that were, tie-ins to events. And I wish there would have been a little more of like the backstory to those events, but, unfortunately there wasn't. And then another thing I didn't particularly care for is that Power Girl kind of took a step back in character development. Before she was there, she was kind of like a stronger character, very self-assured. And while I don't mind a character who has issues with that, and especially with Power Girl, if you know her history, I can understand why she would feel kind of alone and separate and everything, and why she would struggle with that. However, she had overcome that, and now she's kind of went back to that. So I wish they would have just left her character development where it was and maybe just touched a little, like, briefly on that. But instead, it was kind of like a main part of her character. She also honestly felt a little bit younger in this one. I'm not sure what her age is supposed to be, but she did feel younger. And I know she's supposed to be like older than Supergirl and older than like some of the teenage-ish characters, but she felt like she kind of was that age instead of being any little bit even older than them. I do think I'll still continue on with this because this is, like, I believe the start to this author's run, and the next volumes I have are like a continuation of this author's run. So I do think I'll read those and see if I enjoy them anymore. I have finished the Power Girl comics that I was able to find, and again, they were okay, but I felt like these kind of pushed Power Girl back. She had some kind of character backsliding, and yeah, I mean, I do get her, like, issues with the symbioship when she explains it. I completely understand why they are there, but at the same time, the Power Girl I read that was published earlier than this, she didn't have those issues, so I kind of feel like, uh, they should have been there from the beginning, or it was something that she had either already overcame or something like that. And I will say again, as I've said with most of these, there's so many crossovers that aren't included. And so I feel like part of it could have been there. And I don't know why I'm finding this such an issue more with the Power Girl. I've read the Harley Quinn comics, and there haven't been a lot there. When I read the Red Lanterns New 52, I didn't feel like there was that much of an issue there. There have been several others I've read where there's perhaps a little bit, but it all comes full circle or full circle enough. This one just felt like, and again, most of the other ones, where it left a lot of the character development in those crossovers and you didn't see it here, or it left like major plot points that you see just parts of here. And I don't know if maybe that's just because, like with the Harley, I also read Nightwing, Red Hood, Batgirl, and several others. And so it kind of all came together then. Or perhaps this is more of a rebirth era thing, although I do have issues with the New 52. That's what Power Trip was. I did finally figure that out. That is the New 52 part. Um, and maybe it's just because Power Girl ties in more with like Justice Society and Super Family, and those aren't titles that I've really read, and I'm not necessarily super interested in reading although I would like to perhaps at some point just to kind of see. But I was a little disappointed as I have been interested in Power Girl as a character, and having seen her in some of the other comics that I've read. And I do remember reading one where, we kind of learned her whole backstory. I wish I remembered which one that was. I want to say it was perhaps a Supergirl, because it was her meeting Supergirl. But yeah, I was ultimately kind of disappointed with my whole Power Girl um, travels this month. But I will still be reading other comics, don't worry. I still have plenty more on my list. So that's everything I read in May. As always, if you want to let me know what you read in May, or if you've read any of these books, plan to read any of these books, let me know down in the comments. I always love talking books with everybody. And as always, if you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. That way you'll be notified every time I post a new video. And I will see you next time in the book cave.